unrest, chaos and violence, Nepal is now on the road to recovery. As Nepal's former Chief Justice Sushila Karki has been appointed as the country's interim administration head, ending days of speculation who would be serving as the caretaker Prime Minister following the elections then. Now the collapse of KP Oli Sharma's government that has now taken place, it is now being taken over by the successor Sushila Karki, who rose to prominence after becoming Nepal's first female Chief Justice back in 2016. She is recognized for a strong stance against corruption, which helped her gain a clean reputation and image and brought her into the political spotlight. As protesters called for her to lead an interim administration, a consensus that was reached among the Gen Z protesters as the Nepalese president and the army chief were present when it comes to appointment of her, Sushila Karki, as the interim head of the government. Now, this interim government has been tasked for holding elections within the next 6 months. Now, as Sushila Karki has taken oath as Nepal's Prime Minister, the first cabinet meeting under her leadership was held. Karki has chaired the inaugural session, with the cabinet taking key decisions ahead of the parliamentary elections that are now scheduled for the 5th of March in 2026, with the parliament now having been dissolved, and this is the new government that has now taken over. As far as when it comes to the developments are concerned, this is how, following days of mass protest that was spearheaded by the young Nepalese frustrated youth who were fed up with corruption and unemployment. Now, the former Chief Justice Sushila Karki, who has been now sworn in as the interim Prime Minister of Nepal, the ceremony that was held at Nepal's Rashtrapati Bhavan days after speculation and behind-the-scenes negotiations that were taking place, bringing to office the country's first woman head of the government. Now, following the oath-taking ceremony, it has been decided that general elections would be held on the 5th of March next year in 2026. साकेत हमारे साथ जुड़ रहे हैं। साकेत, हमने देखा है कि कितने दिनों के बाद विरोध प्रदर्शन के बाद हम अब देख रहे हैं कि स्थिरता लौटती हुई नजर आ रही है नेपाल में। सुशीला कर्की इज नाउ द न्यू प्राइम मिनिस्टर।
देखिए, बिल्कुल लगातार इसको लेकर कोशिशें हो रही थी। वहां पर सेना प्रमुख के द्वारा जो जेनजी के नेतृत्वकर्ता थे, लगभग 18 लोगों का ये प्रतिनिधिमंडल था, उनके द्वारा, और साथ ही साथ जो सरकार में और लोग मौजूद थे, तो इन लोगों की मीटिंग लगातार हुई। 2 से 3 राउंड मीटिंग हुई थी, लेकिन एक मत नहीं बन पा रहा था। लेकिन कल मीटिंग जो कल की हुई है, उसमें जो जेनजी के तरफ से जो कहा गया था, जो उनके तरफ से शर्तें रखी गई थी, उसे आखिरकार मान ली गई और उसी के आधार पर कार्की को अंतरिम प्रधानमंत्री बना दिया गया है। कल उन्होंने ओथ भी ले लिया। लेकिन अब है कि 6 महीने के अंदर एक बार फिर से वहां पर लोकतंत्र के लिए चुनाव होना होगा। उसकी तैयारी के लिए अब सब कुछ करना होगा, और साथ ही साथ अभी बहुत सारे ऐसी चीजें हैं जो बहुत ही कह सकते हैं कि क्योंकि मंत्रिमंडल का विस्तार भी होना होगा, कौन कौन मंत्री होंगे, क्या होगा, किनको क्या जिम्मेदारी मिलेगी, क्योंकि अभी सारे विभाग कार्की के पास ही है, तो ऐसे में उसको भी डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करना होगा। तो तमाम तरह की चीजें अभी सामने रहेगी, और जो हिंसा हुआ नेपाल में, जो क्षति हुई, तमाम चीजों पर अभी काम करने की जरूरत है। नेपाल को फिर से तैयार करने की जरूरत है। तो ये तमाम जो कह सकते हैं एक चुनौती, वो इनके सामने होगी कि किस तरह से इन्हें वो हैंडल करते हैं। कोई मेजर्स
लिए जाएंगे नई सरकार की तरफ से, क्योंकि कई आरोप लगाए जा रहे थे पिछली सरकार और पिछले देश के प्रधानमंत्री के ऊपर। अब क्या उनके ऊपर भी क्या कोई एक्शन लिया जाएगा?
देखिए, बिल्कुल लेना पड़ेगा, और यही शर्तें जो जेनजी की तरफ से दी भी गई है कि जो भी भ्रष्टाचार में शामिल थे, मंत्रिमंडल में जो शामिल लोग थे, उन पर एक्शन हो, ये भी एक शर्त रखी गई थी। और लगातार इसी की मांग को लेकर ये पूरा आंदोलन भी चला था। जो सड़कों पर तस्वीरें देखी हमने कि किस तरह से वहां के हालात रहे, तो ऐसे में एक्शन तो निश्चित तौर पर लेना पड़ेगा। लेकिन सबसे बड़ी जिम्मेदारी होगी एक बार फिर से अगला सरकार गठन का, कि आखिर उसमें किस तरह से चीजें चलती है, क्योंकि राज परिवार और ये तमाम लोग भी लगे हुए हैं। तो इसमें देखना होगा आने वाले समय में इन चीजों को किस तरह से हैंडल करती है नेपाल सरकार।
चलिए, बने रहिए हमारे साथ साकेत। एज फार एज द पिक्चर्स दैट केम इन अटेंडेंस वाज द आर्मी चीफ एंड द नेपाल प्रेसिडेंट हु was present and administered the oath of office to Sushila Karki, who has now become the new Prime Minister of Nepal. Now, what has now been led as far as when it comes to this development is concerned, this has also been welcomed by the government of India as a close neighbor and fellow democracy and a long-term development partner. What has now been said that India will continue to closely watch the developments with Nepal for its well-being and prosperity when it comes to the people and the countries as well that go back as far as when it comes to the relationship is concerned for the last several decades. However, when it comes to this decision that has now been announced, these developments has followed days of mass protests that was spearheaded by the young Nepalese youth. Now, it was being touted earlier that the social media ban was said to be the trigger, but the youth say that they were fed up with corruption and nepotism that actually brought out their anger on the streets. But now what is now being learned that there would be a lot of activities, especially when it comes to rebuilding the administration, the government, and of course Kathmandu, where all in these pockets violent protests were witnessed for the last several days. But after days of unrest in Nepal, Kathmandu Mayor Balin Shah has now paid tribute to the Gen Z, the youth who brought change to the country. The mayor who has honored the martyrs and has saluted the bravery, wishing speedy recovery to those who have been injured. Now remember, as far as the lives that has been lost in Nepal violence, it has gone up to nearly 36, with several hundreds of them people who have been injured in this violence. Now this development is now coming at a time, Balin Shah himself being one of the front runners there to lead the government and the administration in the current form. However, he has wholeheartedly supported the proposal when it comes to Sushila Karki, whose name was forwarded, and a consensus that was now built up on her name. Well, as far as Sushila Karki is now concerned, we'll get you the details exactly when it comes to the role that she was now taken over as the new Prime Minister, as the new head, the interim head, and the challenges that lie before when it comes to this new administration. Stability, of course, should be brought back to Nepal as far as when it comes to rebuilding is now concerned of several of those institutions. We have seen those pictures that came in. As far as the Supreme Court is concerned, we're looking at the Parliament is also concerned. They have all been burned down, but when it comes to administration and holding the elections as soon as possible, that would be the biggest challenges that Sushila Karki has to face. Now, she's the first woman to serve as a Chief Justice there. She began her professional journey as a teacher, and she was known as a fearless, competent figure. She was also part of the 2006 Constitutional Drafting Committee and was then appointed as the ad hoc Supreme Court Justice in 2009, and thereafter was appointed as the permanent FC Justice in 2010. Now, as far as this development is concerned, we'll keep our eye out. Let's in the meantime focus on another round of breaking updates